Hello fellow travelers, my name's SG and welcome to the channel. Today, I want to do something a little different. I want to talk about what might have been if the CW had decided to move forward with more shows, and instead of focusing on the main Flash, Batman, Superman, what would they have focused on otherwise? What other big characters would have been? Or what would have been interesting to see? So, without further ado, let's get started. But before that, please leave a like, comment, and please subscribe if you like this content. I would really appreciate it. Alright, let's go on. Now, first on the list would obviously have to be a fan favorite animated series, Stag Shock. I do believe Stag Shock could have been an amazing series in itself, with its very diverse cast of characters, ranging from both heroes to villains. You gotta admire both the directions they took, with even some villains becoming anti-heroes or even becoming something more of themselves, looking at you, Rubber Man. And even for the villains, their whole bit about wanting to be recognized as major threats or wanting to just run the streets of Dakota. I did appreciate this series and I did like it, and it did in fact introduce a whole new row and generation of fans into the Milestone Comics era of things, back when they were trying to do that movement in DC Comics. I do think that it does need a second chance at life and could definitely prosper now more than ever, and I do hope to see something about it later on in the future. Another series that might have been interesting, harder to do, but could relate back to Superman, would have been a Shazam series. If we saw Billy Batson actually taken seriously rather than we saw him in the movies, relate him more back to his 80s characters view on it, or even just show the short that we saw in the DC Showcase, showing that version of Billy Batson being this main figure in the show, it would have been a whole different setup, would have opened more doors for the character, and would have led towards more drama, him accepting people into his life, him wanting to connect with others, and so on and so forth, and even make the talking tiger that becomes his friend in the comic, maybe make it an actual thing. There are a lot of possibilities you could have done with Shazam that I think the movies really didn't touch upon. Not that they didn't want to, much more they couldn't, considering its runtime. But Shazam definitely does go in one of those ranks where it could have been an interesting and fun and lighthearted series, but at a touch couldn't be dark, considering the character and his surroundings above all. Not only that, we do have several instances where he does work with the Justice League. If you go with the modern day version of him being an early Justice League member, we could also have Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman making an appearance, or even just the Flash himself. There is a lot of promise in the Shazam series. I think that they would have definitely hit the right amount of campy, but at the same time, real world issues that a lot of shows I don't think could touch upon. Seeing it from both spectrums as the eyes of a child, but at the same time seeing it through the eyes of an adult, such as the wisdom of Solomon constantly whispering in his ear. And you could have had the main wizard be his guide, kind of like his Harvey Bullock character in this. Another character I believe would have been a great addition to the CW verse, or even just gave it a new breath of fresh air, probably would have been Blue Beetle. I know that one might have been harder to do, considering, the character is more robotic and does require more of an outer space kind of vibe to it. But if you grounded it, allowed it to make more story on Earth, and even let a year one scenario go where you were able to let him learn about his abilities more than anything else, that you could have eased it in. You could have made it more realistic, made the character more likable, team him up with older characters while at the same time learning about newer characters. You could have teamed him up with Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, and then teamed him up with Stargirl. There are different scenarios you could have, but Blue Beetle could have definitely been an interesting, maybe not long-lived series, but could have definitely made something interesting with the Blue Beetle series being the way it was. Fire and Ice would have been an interesting addition to the CW series because they were considered fan favorites among the Batman Brave and the Bold crowd, and the Justice League animated series did have them appear in and out. So to have their stories grow later on in a way that's a lot like the Supergirl series, but I think taking it a little more seriously and letting them be able to experience their characters. Like, you have been introduced to a whole different brand of characters with them, such as Guy Gardner and various other ones. It would have been interesting, it would have been fun, and I do think that it is still something that could be up in the air. But for the most part, it does lack a little something, but I think that's just because we don't have much story in them to begin with. I mean, if this took place right before the Blackest Night series with Ice, then that would have been a little more intriguing, but nonetheless, it definitely does have some possibilities. Well, now that we've talked about a little about singular character storylines, why don't we talk about group dynamics? Because, as we know, everybody likes a good Justice League team, or X-Men, or maybe even Doom Patrol. And a good response to those, especially to Doom Patrol, would have definitely been the Outsiders. The Outsiders, consisting of various members constantly coming in and out, did rival that of the Justice League for a second, but not by much. They did keep the storylines keeping going here and there, but for the most part, they weren't ever this bigger group. In fact, they were more of a side team that Batman will work on, such as Batman and the Outsiders. But if you focus mainly on the Outsider characters themselves and a more obscure set of heroes and villains, I think it would have been something interesting. Like Black Lightning, Katana, you could have had Metamorpho, also various other ones, even characters like Plastic Man making an appearance if you wanted to. But overall, just to add a weirder range of characters that aren't based on villains, the Outsiders are definitely some of the best storylines that you could probably go with. Society of America would have definitely been another series that could have worked as a more realistic, grounded look at the superhero genre. And I'm not talking about the original or even the newer version. I'm talking about the 2007 to 2011 version, written by Jeff Johns. That version did keep the idea of superheroes being super, but at the same time let them be human. Did allow them to grow. Did allow them to have relationships. Did allow them to be people. So that one is definitely an interesting one to eye, to look for something that not quite The Boys, but allows it wiggle room to be realistic, to allow characters to be people rather than just fictional characters. I mean, just look at the interactions and the storyline between Stargirl and Shazam himself. That would have been good. Of course, we would have gotten a bunch of other random characters, and even older fan favorites such as Wildcat, Hourman, and so on and so forth, that would have made appearances and would have made a bigger impact into the storyline, allowing for drama, but at the same time allowing for interesting storytelling to come along down the line. Of course, if you didn't really want to focus on a team specifically, why not mix and match? Why not try to do what the Brave and the Bold series try to do? Except this time, call it World's Finest, and in this scenario you make it about 2 or 3 heroes teaming up together to fight against an odd, allowing them to grow connections and seeing what the fans would have liked to see. Now with this idea you would have had more characters coming through, but you wouldn't have to rely on a main set of characters being constant figures in the show. You would probably have various other characters popping through. Like I said, you would have maybe Batman and Superman being in the finale, but then you would have had other characters filling in the slots. Maybe Hawkman and Plastic Man teaming up. Maybe Green Lantern and Katana. Storylines like that allows you wiggle room to move around. Of course, you would have had fan favorite characters teaming up like Huntress and The Question, or Green Arrow and Canary, and basing them more on the comic book version of themselves rather than the CW, or even allowing the CW to have their team-ups that we didn't get to see happen in their main timelines or in the main continuity of their shows. With a series like The World's Finest, you could have had more wiggle room to do stuff, allowing for there to be team-ups that fans did expect, and the ones that fans didn't know they needed. This allows people to get creative, such as writers, directors, and even some special effects artists to be able to stretch their legs and maybe even inspire a new series along the way. Alright, the one that I would be remiss not to talk about, even though I know it's not a team, probably would be a futuristic Batman series, much like the Batman Beyond series, but allowing more of a leeway to it. You would make it about either Nightwing, maybe their kids, or maybe something further along down the line. Maybe make it about Red Robin. You don't have to make it about Batman. You just have to make it about Gotham. You have to make it about a Robin, or maybe even Batgirl. You can have a series that is based in the future of Gotham, where Bruce Wayne isn't dead, but much more he is retired at this point. He is not showing up out in costume anymore because he's gotten older, taking the story of Batman Beyond, but going in those years that Bruce Wayne wasn't active and Terry McGinnis hasn't raised up to that scenario yet, allowing some room for the vigilantes of that era to figure it out, and even going in the storyline that you have already set, such as where is Nightwing in the Batman Beyond series? Tim Drake doesn't want to do the hero stuff anymore, and Barbara Gordon has retired and become commissioner. You can allow there's room in there to be able for something bigger or something new that I think fans would really enjoy, but at the same time keep something familiar. When making a list of a series that could be picked up, you have to think both what would be interesting and at the same time what's cost effective. Because when you think the CW show, you don't think great quality, but you do think a lot of quantity. So if you take into that account, you can pretty much figure out what would work and what wouldn't work. What would people like to see, but what would be the most realistic example of how to do it. And I think that these are actually the best options you can have. Having fun with the storylines, and at the same time realizing that you might have to ground yourself a little bit to what is possible. Not to say that it's not possible to do more down the line, but just saying that this is definitely what I would perceive being the list that would be interesting enough and have enough backing to become something bigger. Allow it to become something greater, if you will. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this list. I know this is a little different than what I usually do, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you have a series that you would like to see becoming more interesting down the line, then please leave in the comment section. I would like to hear. And maybe there'll be another list later on in the future. Who knows? But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed and see you guys next time.